Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the National Coalition of Promise Zones 2020 Federal Convening presentation titled COVID-19 Resources, EPA's Brownfields and Land Revitalization Program. It's going to be about grants and technical assistance. My name is Julius Austin. I am with the Sacramento Promise Zone. I'm the Sacramento Promise Zone coordinator here in Sacramento, California. Our lead agency is the Sacramento Housing and Redevelopment Agency. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to handle a couple housekeeping things first. First, I want to notify everyone that the session will be recorded. It is simultaneously being aired on Facebook Live on the Sacramento Promise Zone Facebook page. And the great part about that is that if you have missed presentations from the first 6 presentations of the convening, you can go to the Sacramento Promise Zone Facebook page and view those at any time at your leisure. Also would like to ask all participants to please remain muted throughout the presentation. Though you are muted, there will be ample opportunity for you to ask questions or make comments in the chat box. So please use the chat box for questions and comments. Our moderator, Dr. Michael Huff, will be monitoring the chat box, and I'll be assisting him with that. And he will be presenting the questions and the comments to our wonderful presenter, who will be introduced shortly. And also, we've allowed for some time at the end of the presentation for a question and answer session. So, once again, please feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation in the chat box, and then also you'll be able to ask questions during the question and answer session. So, without further ado, I'd like to turn over the presentation to our moderator, Dr. Michael Huff, who is the Sacramento Promise Zone Community Liaison, and he works for the HUD San Francisco office. And I'll have Michael take it away.
Thank you very much, Julius. As you can see, my lips are moving, so hopefully you can hear what I'm saying, everybody. If not, go ahead and wave. We're in for a treat today because during this time of COVID, the COVID recovery, actual resources are pretty scarce, and that's where we're really happy we could do this federal convening. And one of the things you'll find from today's session is that the Brownfields program really represent a unique revitalization tool for Promise Zone communities. The actual program, as you'll see as we get into it, provides some opportunities for job training, economic development, and workforce development, and has a tie to housing as well. So we are actually very fortunate to have a representative from the EPA with us today who will provide an overview. Our representative is actually Amy Storm. She is the Land Revitalization Coordinator and Acting Policy Research and Outreach Team Leader for EPA's Office of Brownfields and Land Revitalization. Her work actually supports community-led redevelopment of contaminated properties, which we have many of in the actual Promise Zone communities throughout the country, and associated neighborhood revitalization strategies. Amy holds a master's degree in city and regional planning and business administration. Amy, take it away.
Thanks so much, Michael and Julius. Hi, can y'all see me, hear me okay? Okay, great. I'm gonna just start by saying I really appreciate the opportunity to be part of this convening, and I hope I can answer your questions as we go along the way. I've been with our Brownfields and Land Revitalization program at EPA for over 10 years. It's a really exciting program, and thank you for the nice introduction, Michael. I think there's just lots of incredible opportunities that can come from cleaning up and reusing brownfield sites. So I do have a presentation. Give me 1 minute to share my screen. And okay, can you all see my presentation? All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, just wanted to start by laying the groundwork of what is a brownfield site, and basically the legal definition that Congress gave us in 2002 is this. It's a really broad definition. You can often think about a brownfield site as perhaps being the local dry cleaners that went out of business in your community. Sometimes it's auto body shops or gas stations. It can be an old industrial complex. So there's really brownfields kind of all over the place. And it's any property that is or could be contaminated. Even the perception of contamination is what will constitute it for a brownfield site. So if it has that kind of fear that the property could be contaminated, we know we're dealing with a site that is going to have extra challenges to redevelopment. So there's several ways that our office at EPA supports the revitalization and cleanup and reuse of brownfield sites. Kind of the primary way, the way that I think we're best known for, is that we offer a lot of different types of grant opportunities and technical assistance opportunities that really help communities plan and actually assess or sample or characterize, find out what's there at a brownfield site. And as Michael mentioned, we have programs to help do job training and support job training opportunities so that the people who live close to brownfield sites actually can benefit from the opportunity, job opportunities that come from assessing and cleaning up sites. We also support state programs and tribal programs through voluntary cleanup programs that are done at the state level and tribal level. So our program is able to fund those entities. And then another big part of our program is clarifying liability and what the law says about what kinds of defenses or protections or exemptions one might have from being liable for contamination at a site. Let's talk about the grants that we offer. It is quite a slew. We have, I'll talk about each of these, but basically the work that our grants can cover is to assess and clean up brownfield sites and support the job training. So in terms of like, what's a brownfield assessment, what does that mean? Basically what grantees are able to do with our money is look at a brownfield site and make a determination, is this site contaminated? And if it is, how contaminated is it? This is really important because as you all know, risk in real estate is what you want to manage. And so if you don't know what you're dealing with in terms of contaminants on a property and if they're going to be a problem or not for your redevelopment, you need to spend money to figure out what's actually there and how the contamination, if present, is going to limit your redevelopment opportunities. So the grants that we provide allow people to do the things that you can see here: inventory, characterize, assess, do planning, and actually fund community involvement activities throughout the process. I just wanted to make a note here that for brownfields assessment, we have actual brownfield assessment grants. We also have what's called a multi-purpose grant, which will allow communities to do assessment as well as some cleanup activities and planning activities. And then we also have a program called Targeted Brownfields Assessment, which is not a grant, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later and how you can access it. So we also have grants that fund the actual cleanup of brownfield sites. And so this comes out in 3 different ways. We have cleanup grants themselves. So this is where a community would apply to EPA for a grant up to $500,000 so that they can do the planning work and the cleanup associated on the site. We also run a revolving loan fund program where our money goes out to a community in the form of a grant, but the community is able to use that money to provide low interest or no interest loans so that the money can come back in and create a revolving opportunity there. And that money can also be sub-granted if needed, some portion of it, not the whole thing. And then also, as I said, there are multi-purpose grants, and those allow you to do several different types of brownfield assessment and cleanup activities. And then we have this really exciting part of our program called our Environmental Workforce Development and Job Training Program. This is something that we're really proud of. This is money up to $200,000 for a grant that lasts about 3 years to help develop curricula and train people in the community for these kinds of job opportunities that are around brownfields and some related other types of environmental jobs. Usually you see this kind of job program in conjunction with the community college. So this money doesn't support like soft skills development. It really is focused on the training. But so it works really well in conjunction with an already established job training program. This is our long list of entities that are eligible to receive grants. And so primarily you'll see local governments, states, regional councils, and tribes, and nonprofits. This is a really exciting time right now. If you are interested in brownfield grant opportunities, we have several opportunities that are open right now. This year, we're competing our multi-purpose grant, our assessment grant, and our cleanup grant. So those solicitations are on the street right now, and their deadline is October 28th. We're also competing our Environmental Workforce Development and Job Training Grant. That application is due September 22nd. And then we also have a grant opportunity out for to provide technical assistance to support equitable development, environmental justice in brownfield communities. And that grant is due September 21st. So I just want to mention here that all of this is on our website, and happy to make sure that that gets into your hands so you have the website. And also we've got some upcoming webinars for the multi-purpose assessment and job training grant opportunities, September 14th. They're going to have a webinar to talk through those. We already had webinars to explain the Environmental Workforce Development and Job Training Grant and the available Equitable Development and EJ grant. So those webinars are archived and posted. Michael, if there's any questions that have come in, feel free to jump in.
We actually have a question from Andrea related to, and the question is the Workforce Development Training Program available for Section 3 residents?
I'm not familiar with Section 3 residents.
So Section 3 is a program through HUD, and it basically, requires, when there's development and construction opportunities, that residents of housing are able to be part of that and receive that training and jobs opportunities.
Got it. Okay, got it. Yes.
Amy, this is Julius. Section 3 also speaks towards vendors and putting a focus on minority-led vendors and vendors from low-income communities as well.
Got it. Okay. No, that's an excellent question. Thanks for making that connection. You know, we don't have a specific focus on that, but you know, the people who are able to participate in these job training programs, as I said, it's a lot of times run through a community college. And so I don't have all the details about eligibility, but I do think it's really wide open, but there isn't a kind of special emphasis on Section 3. So I hope that helps.
No, thank you very much, Amy. I do see a couple other questions coming in.
Okay.
Let's see. We have Jake, I'm going to go to Nancy first. Nancy has a question. Who are some of the EPA technical assistance providers that are currently available to assist communities with their brownfields projects? And then a follow-up is, and what kinds of assistance can they provide for planning, strategy, project development, et cetera?
Yes, I've got a lot of information coming up on that exact question. So if I don't answer it after the next part of the presentation, please ask me again.
Okay, perfect. Let's see, why don't we, I'll let you continue and then I'll go to Jake's question after that.
Okay, super. Thank you. And yes, please keep sending questions. That's great. Okay, well, thanks for teeing up the technical assistance part. This is what I wanted to focus on for the rest of my time with you. So we have a lot of grants, and that's really exciting, but we're also incredibly proud that we have a lot of technical assistance opportunities as well. And so I really encourage you to learn about these and reach out to our technical assistance providers, work with your EPA regional brownfield staff, and have them all become familiar with the projects that you're interested in. And you know, things take time, but that's how things get rolling as well. So the main technical assistance pieces I'm going to talk with you about are our targeted brownfields assessment program. I'm going to talk with you about our regional technical assistance to brownfield communities program. And then the third one are our nationwide technical assistance providers. Starting with the TBA, the Targeted Brownfields Assessment, this is a technical assistance opportunity that is probably might feel like a grant to the community, but it's not a grant. This is where EPA is able to direct a contractor, one of EPA's contractors, to go out and perform a phase 1, sometimes phase 2 site assessment at a brownfield property. And this is done free of charge to the community. And so the number one thing to take away from this is if you have a site that you need to know, what's there before you can start redeveloping it or even planning for the redevelopment of it, and you don't have a grant, you don't have capacity to apply for the grant, this can be a really good place to get some resources. And the best way to do that is to work with the regional office. So that's TBAs. We also have, as I said, our TAB program, which is our Technical Assistance to Brownfield Communities program. We have 3 providers right now, and basically how this works is EPA, our office, provides a grant to these 3 organizations that you see here, NJIT, CCLEAR, and Kansas State University. And then their job is to work with communities on their brownfield challenges. And it doesn't matter if that community has a brownfield grant with EPA or not. This type of assistance is available to anybody who wants to get more familiar with how to deal and how to address their brownfield sites. So you can see here some of the types of activities that they do to help the communities guide through the cleanup and redevelopment process. And they also work together to try to coordinate and leverage each other's expertise. This, I wanted to share kind of the same information, but we talk about EPA regions a lot, and I know that that's not obvious to a lot of people. So here's the breakdown of EPA regions, and so just take a few seconds to locate, which state you're in and who your TAB provider is. so that you'll know who you can reach out to if you have any brownfield questions that you want to check in with them on. Okay, so moving away from regional-based assistance, we also have lots of other technical assistance partners that we work with on a nationwide basis. And these are more topical expertise that we want to provide to communities. So the approach is similar in that any any community that has a brownfield and needs some help is able to reach out to these technical assistance providers for some information and assistance. And so we have a range of organizations. And for a lot of these, I highlighted it here just to give you a sense. We've got some grants that are closing, some grants that are going to be with us for a little bit longer. So we'll probably be soon recompeting some of these opportunities. But I'll quickly run through these grants and what each of them does. So with CDFA, we work with the Council of Development Finance Agencies to help brownfield communities understand better their opportunities for different funding and financing mechanisms for brownfields redevelopment. We've been working with Groundwork USA to support equitable development and environmental justice redevelopment approaches for brownfield sites. We've been working with the University of Louisville have been working on, it's less technical assistance, kind of more research focused, but they've been trying to develop a brownfield benefits calculator toolkit. We work with the Hazardous Materials Training and Research Institute, HMTRI. They are our capacity builder and convener to support the job training program, the grantee, both job training program actual grantees and just other folks who are interested in that type of job training opportunity. And we work with the International City Managers Association they primarily are partners when we put on a brownfield conference. And we most recently did a Brownfield National Training Conference in December of 2019. And we're planning to do another one in April of 2021. And then lastly, we fund at SWAMO, the Association of State and Territorial Solid Waste Management Officials, which is a way to have the states and territories who do the voluntary cleanup programs all work together and support each other and work with EPA. Okay, I wanted to spend a couple of minutes talking about the land revitalization side of our program. So we are the Office of Brownfields and Land Revitalization, and with all the grants and technical assistance, we sometimes kind of don't talk about what LR is, and so I want to share a little bit with you about that today. And
Amy,
yep. Mm-hmm.
Amy, could I just interject before you move on? We did have a question that's more tailored with the related to the training, workforce training.
Great.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so this question came in. It says, any chance that there might be more money for the workforce development training program grant in the future? They tend to get a lot of interest every year, but it seems to diminish a bit once folks examine the NOFA and see that the funding amounts for the non-brownfields training. So when they see that it's kind of low, just wondering if there's any opportunity for more funding for that.
Yeah, so I think what the person is asking is like kind of going out. What we do in this program is we get funding from other EPA offices to support things like wastewater, infrastructure training, and there's some pesticide management. And so we have to, in order to be able to fund those programs, we have to get money from our sister offices at EPA in order to do that. And year to year, that changes the amount of money that we're able to get from those sister offices. So I think that's a great question. I cannot promise that we're going to get a lot more money from those other programs, but I'd be happy to talk with you more about how that works. offline and put you in touch with our lead for this if you want to kind of understand that process a little bit better.
No, that's perfect. We'll go ahead and connect them to you. Thank you.
Thanks. Cool. Okay. Land revitalization. So, get the slide to advance. Okay. So, the land revitalization part of our program is very exciting, and it's my favorite part personally, because what we do in land revitalization is we really strive to help the communities that have brownfields or other contaminated properties safely and sustainably reuse those properties. And so for the past year or two, we've really spent time trying to break open and demystify the redevelopment process for dealing with contaminated properties. So thinking about, how does a developer look at these properties? What kind of risks does she or he see when they're thinking about contamination? How do they weigh those risks? How do they manage those risks? And who are all the players? And with the goal of, helping communities understand that process a little bit better and being able to participate more fully in development decisions and even possibly working with developers or doing community development, because we really hope to put communities in the driver's seat on what kind of development they see and how they want the redevelopment of their brownfield sites to go. And we know that with contaminated properties, or again, properties that might be contaminated, there's just a lot of perceived and real barriers. So we spend a lot of time in the LR program trying to work through those and providing different types of tools and technical assistance to work through that. So we've got on our website this land revitalization toolkit. We continue to work on it and add new resources as we go forward. So please check it out and keep checking it out, because we'll be doing more things in the next year. The other part of our land revitalization program is that we are able to provide to a handful of communities each year some direct technical assistance through contractor expertise. And we've been doing this for about the last 10 years. Basically, what happens is a lot of times communities will have a brownfield site, primarily. Sometimes it's just a brownfield site or contaminated property, and they have been working with their community, but there's a barrier, right? Maybe they don't know what the market says as far as what's going to be feasible at this property. Perhaps they need some kind of site design that's going to help the community actually see what are the possibilities that could happen at this site. Sometimes there's just questions of, we want to go make our property. It was a wastewater treatment plant, and now we want to turn it into a park. Like, how do we do that? That's a big project. What are the different steps? What kind of resources do we need? How do we break that apart into something that's a much more manageable project? Anyway, we get a lot of different requests coming in from communities that are on the cusp of really wanting to reuse their sites, but they just don't have the in-house ability to get some of these questions answered. So through our land revitalization technical assistance, we're able to provide that kind of support to communities. And this is not a grant competition. It's not even any kind of competition. It's communities can access this resource by, again, getting familiar and working with your regional EPA, brownfields, and land revitalization staff, and letting them know what project you have in mind, what your goals are, and what you're trying to do. And then, if we have availability and resources to support that, then we try to do that. Okay, so Michael had asked me just to take a few minutes to just mention opportunity zones. and a little bit about their relationship with brownfield redevelopment. So I know this probably doesn't apply to everybody on this call, but for those of you who have opportunity zones in your communities, I did want to mention just a couple of things. So this is a good example of, in the land revitalization part of our program, you know, we've looked closely at the opportunity zones program and tried to figure out how brownfields redevelopment could be supported by that program. So for those of you who are not familiar, there's census tracts across the United States that governors designated in June of 2018 to become opportunity zones. There were some specific criteria about how the census tracts could be designated. I think it was something about, like, Michael, you could probably even speak to this better than me, but 20% of the low-income census tracts, the governors could nominate to be opportunity zones. And anyway, we recognize that there's a lot of overlap if these census tracts and brownfield redevelopment. And so our goal at EPA has been to just shine a light on that possible overlap, and if there are investment opportunities through the Opportunity Zone program to encourage people to look at and reuse their brownfield sites. So the final IRS regulations do actually have a lot to say about brownfields, and that's good news because initially they didn't. The first couple of tranches that came out from the IRS were pretty silent on whether or not assessment and cleanup type activities could be covered by opportunity zone investment. So there is now a lot of language in the IRS regulations. We've got a fact sheet on our website about, you know, what the IRS regulations say in regards to brownfields. So if you are looking at properties in the opportunity zone, I encourage you to take a look at our website. And then, of course, since this is a federal tax program, talk to tax attorneys about everything else. But we've got some good information out there that can get you started. And then just to kind of drive the point home, last year we were able to select 155 grants and hand those out to communities for assessing and cleaning up our brownfield sites. And of those, 118 could potentially assess or clean up sites within opportunity zones. So again, just showing that there is a lot of overlap there. And then what I wanted to share with you now is something that we've been talking about in regard to opportunity zone, but I think this is a good point to come back to for, really for anybody, whether you have an opportunity zone or not, how our brownfield grants really fit into the redevelopment picture. And basically they're helping communities prepare their sites for investment and for redevelopment. And so while I'm showing here a very linear process of what development looks like, we know it never goes this smoothly, but keeping in mind that these are the types of things that EPA's brownfields grants can fund to help get a site ready for investment, to provide the parameters around which you want to attract development that supports what your community wants to see. And getting a site ready is really valuable to investors. In the same vein, this is another way to think about getting ready for a site, giving investors or developers options, and community developers as well, like thinking about what are the ways that we could rebuild this property, what are the different ways it could look, what does the community prefer, et cetera. And so I just really want to strike home that our grants and technical assistance can really support your work around this. So there are a handful of programs at EPA that gives some kind of preference to opportunity zone communities in the selection for federal grants. So you'll see them here. But again, even if you're not in an opportunity zone, we don't want this to dissuade you from applying for these programs. But there is some kind of language in our guidelines that asks how the brownfields projects that you have in mind can support economic growth and opportunity zones.
So Amy, I just wanted to interject. You missed something on the last slide. It talks about local food, local places. Would that work with like a garden?
Okay. Yes. So we've got, this is a program, this is a non-brownfields program, but this is, we've got another office at EPA, sister office called the Office of Community Revitalization. And through there, they provide a lot of different types of technical assistance opportunities. So again, not a grant, but providing contractor expertise to work with a community. And in this case, to help the communities look at local food systems. They do that in a lot of ways. I think the community garden is part of it. I think it's also like providing opportunities for farmers markets and other related opportunities like that. So it's worth looking at if that's an area of interest for your community.
Thank you. Excellent.
Yeah, good. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say that office also has done work on healthcare and like helping communities bring urgent cares and health centers to their downtowns. I think they will soon be working on some efforts around recreational opportunities. So it's an office. The office was formerly our Smart Growth office, for those of you who are familiar with that term. And then over the years, they've moved more into what they call a community revitalization space. So they don't work on brownfields revitalization, but of course we work closely with them because we're all trying to accomplish the same things in terms of helping communities, reuse and bring their downtowns back to life. Okay, I think it might actually be my last slide. And again, it says, how can brownfield communities prepare for QOF investment, which is qualified opportunity fund investment. But I would say any investment, whether it's opportunity fund or not, I mean, these are the things that you could be doing right now within your communities to basically get the information that developers or other investors would be interested in to make your properties more attractive. I should have sent it here or put it on here, but I forgot to. We've got a document we put out, I want to say last year, called Community Actions That Drive Redevelopment, and it really is basically all the things that a community can be doing now to kind of break down the barriers to site reuse in a brownfield situation. So, Michael, I can send that on to you to pass out with the resources for as a follow-up. And that's it from me. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much, Amy. Let's see, any other questions that we might have? I want to just say that I'm really excited because you mentioned so many things related to brownfields, but you've also mentioned things that kind of align with other things we're working on. All the redevelopment piece and revitalization piece is really key now, especially COVID and with the economic issues. So I think there's a lot of overlap, including the opportunity zones, but also separate from that with the promise of these. So I really
yeah, well, keep us in mind and let's, keep coordinating. One thing that we're going to be doing, we haven't advertised it yet, but in October, we're going to be hosting a webinar that talks about market insights for brownfields, with the idea being like kind of what does the market look like across the country, because of course it's different in different regions. And given COVID, you know, we think that nothing's really happening, but the truth is that there is some redevelopment happening, and a lot of it has to do with warehousing and distribution and logistics and things like this. And so what we want to bring to communities who join us for the webinar is just the knowledge that, you know, things are happening, and if you do want to try to attract this type of redevelopment to your community, here's some ways that, you know, others have done it, and here's some things that you could be thinking about to work towards that. So if that sounds in line with the things that you're all discussing, we'll be happy to share that and keep sharing whatever we do, because we really, the cleaning up brownfields is really important, and there's so many public health goals around that we're really proud of, but you know, it takes it to the whole nother level when the site can be reused and becomes an asset again, and that's really a big part of our goal.
It looks like we have a question here. I think we still have time. I'll ask it. It says, with the grant for assessment, do we have to pinpoint areas, or does it actually, the assessment, identify the areas? They have a lot of abandoned properties where they are.
Yep. Let me back up a bit, because I realized later I didn't talk about this, and it probably would be worthwhile. So I'm going all the way back to this slide for assessment grants. So I said, yes, we have assessment grants, and we actually have 3 types of assessment grants. So if you're interested in applying, all this detail is in the guidelines, which are out right now. But there are 3 different types. You can apply for a specific site. We call that a site-specific assessment grant, and you can get up to $200,000 in grant funds for that. Again, it's for one site. You can also apply for what we call a community-wide assessment grant. And what that entails is that at the time of application, you do not have to have specific sites in mind, but you do have to have targeted areas in mind, which I think is what the person asking the question was focused on. And so to get a community-wide assessment grant, you can apply in that way, and those grants are up to $300,000. And then the third way that you can apply for assessment grant money is through a coalition, which is bringing together 3 partners who apply together and will agree to work on areas within each jurisdiction. And that grant can be up to $600,000.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Amy. That's really helpful. And, you know, the more you talk and the more that you go over, it just seems like a lot of these things just really dovetail and align with all the issues that I think our promise zones are experiencing across the country. So
yeah, good. I mean, they're huge challenges, so not good that way, but I'm happy that you know, these kinds of resources could be really helpful to all of you. And I hope that, you know, I do, like I said, now this is probably the 3rd time I'm saying this, like I do encourage you to have a relationship with the regional programs because the regional brownfield programs from EPA, there's a lot of experience there, and a lot of people who've worked with communities likely who've had situations like yours in the past who could kind of help you get on track to start pulling your projects together. Excellent. You can always reach out to me too, but the regional folks will be closer.
Well, this is really great, Amy. I want to thank you for the really valuable and timely information you've provided. about the resources that are provided through the Environmental Protection Agency. I think as we look at the different purposes and reasons for the Promise Zone and the issues we're dealing with issues related to health, related to transportation, related to job, economic development, related to education, and put in there is housing as well. And then, so I think that, it's really awesome for me to learn about the expansive opportunities provided through the EPA. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. I know that going into this session, it was titled COVID-19 resources. And I did want to say, EPA, we have a lot of informational resources about COVID-19 specifically, but there hasn't been a whole lot of financial resources available. But like you said, I mean, the types of programs that we have and have had and will continue to have can definitely be very helpful as communities look to, how do we get prepared for, this, if this happens again, or how do we prepare ourselves for recovery? So yeah, please, I invite you to take another look at us. And if you are interested in the grants, please join the webinar on September 14th to learn more about applying.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
And with that, we'll turn it back over to Julius.
All right. Thank you for moderating, Dr. Michael Huff. And also really want to thank Amy Storm for that wonderful presentation. Amy did provide a lot of great information and details. And so you might want to access the video of this presentation to go back over some of that information. You can review that video on the Sacramento Promise Zone Facebook page. Also, our planning team will be sending out the PowerPoint presentation information from Amy. So you will receive that if you registered for this presentation. If you enjoyed this presentation, please tell your network that there are a number of presentations left in the federal convening. Approximately 8 more presentations tomorrow, and then next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We have some great agencies coming up and some other change agents and leaders who will be doing some presentations, including the USDA, Health and Human Services, EDA, and the FDIC. I want to also thank the National Coalition of Promise Zones planning team. We really appreciate all the work that it took to bring this together. Some of those folks are on the presentation, and so I just want to give a shout out to them. The Promise Zone, National Coalition Promise Zone planning team includes Promise Zone leaders, our U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development community liaisons, and also want to give a special shout out to our AmeriCorps Vista members who are also part of the planning. So thank you all for joining. Once again, please check out the video on the Sacramento Promise Zone Facebook page, and also want to encourage you all to recognize that you can always go to your affiliated Promise Zone to connect to federal agencies and other resources and even other entities that may be helpful to you in an array of areas. So I encourage you to do that. Thank you so much for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day.